Friends and viewer, Leo Tolstoy, a famous writer, Russian writer, and a well-known, world-known writer, famous for his War and Peace, famous for his novel Anna Karenina, for his novel Resurrection, and for his very short story novelette, The Death of Ivan Ilyich. So today let us talk about his own autobiographical type of writing. The name of this writing is called The Confession by Leo Tolstoy, a confession of Tolstoy. So this confession is published in 1880. So by Leo Tolstoy. Leo Tolstoy confession published in 1882 is an autobiographical work that deals with the philosophical and religious aspect of the meaning of life. Tolstoy struggled with how to live a meaningful life. Forms the core of the narrative. The author charts the development of his idea about rationality, faith, and purpose in the context of his youth in Russia and his later writing career and the family life. The Confession, Tolstoy's existential crisis documented in these pages of confession include moments of depression and suicidal thought, which the reader should be prepared for this. So Leo Tolstoy is among the greatest world writer. Most important writing is, as I told you, War and Peace, Anna Karenina in 1878, War and Peace in 1867. And other writers from Gustav Flaubert to Virginia Woolf have sung Tolstoy's praises. Tolstoy's acute psychological insight is one of the compelling features of his work. A Confession provides a fascinating opportunity to follow the author on his psychological journey through deepest despair and joyous clarity. So in this book, it is divided among many chapters. It is a very short confession. It is divided in 16 chapters, this confession. Tolstoy opens the book with a snapshot of his childhood in Russia and particularly his understanding of faith and religion as a young person. He explained that he lost his Christian faith while in university, but maintained a vague belief in Jesus Christ. His only real faith as a young adult was in the ability to improve oneself physically, morally, and intellectually. Tolstoy was ridiculed by his peers for his morality. He moved to St. Petersburg and took up the community of writers where his self-improvement effort waned, and he became disgusted with himself and his community for their selfish desire of fame and fortune. Tolstoy next writes that witnessing a public beheading in Paris made his resolve to start making his own decision. But right and wrong, he moved back to Russia but fell into a spiritual malaise that lasted for 15 years. He then resolved to conflict a difficult question about the meaning of life that he had been avoiding. Tolstoy began to feel that life is meaningless. Previous sources of pleasure, such as family and writing, lost their sweetness when Tolstoy considered that everything ends in death. Tolstoy next discussed the shortcoming of the sciences. He abandoned his belief in progress when he realized that such a belief is absurd. In meaningless world, Tolstoy reinforces finding that life is meaningless. Life is meaningless by referring the work of great thinkers like Socrates and Schopenhauer, who concurred that life is vain and purposeless. Tolstoy is in a pit of despair at this point in the narrative. Chapter 7, the author discusses in chapter 7 about 4 ways to escape the trap of meaninglessness: ignorance, Epicureanism, or losing oneself in the pleasure, suicide, and simply letting life drag on. Tolstoy cites suicide as the moral honorable of these escape, but admits that he is too weak to take this path. Tolstoy sets out to find a mistake in the logic that brought him to this point. Tolstoy begins reflecting on his pride, which made him ignore the way that millions of people found meaning through faith. He makes the uneasy hypothesis that the answer of the question of life might involve abandoning reason. Eventually, Tolstoy discovered the flaw caused by his commitment to rationality. He sought answers that exist outside the realm of reason. He concluded that only faith can provide meaning. He then dove into the study of various religion and was disappointed by the behavior of elite Christians who did not adhere to their lofty principles. Tolstoy found that only the pure and simple faith of common people is authentic. Tolstoy compares his existence to that of working class and realized that he was able to understand the meaning of life because he squandered in his selfishness. He then set out to live in a simple life like faithful masses he admired. Crucially, Tolstoy realized that as long as he sought God, he felt sure-footed and strong. Tolstoy struggled with orthodox theology but tried to accept it as a part of his faith journey. However, he struggled to go along with the religious rituals that he found absurd. Tolstoy increasingly found that he felt closer to God when he listened to the faithful poor talk about their lives, while he fell deeper into despair when he associated with educated, affluent people. In the end of this book, Tolstoy broke in the Russian Orthodox Church, deciding that an interdenominational or ecumenical approach to faith, in which the attainment of great spiritual knowledge is the most important thing, is the best way forward. He concludes that the book by admitting that Orthodox theology is a mixture of truth and falsehood, and announce his attention to understand why reason ends and faith begins. So this is, in this question, Tolstoy tell us the theme of this. It tells us when theme of this book is we have to understand what does it mean, the meaningless lives of the affluent, the meaningful lives of the poor. Tolstoy assert and reassert a message from the gospel. It is harder for a rich person to enter the kingdom of heaven than it is for the camel to pass through the eye of a needle. For Tolstoy, it becomes necessary to renounce the life of our class and recognize that this is not life but only the semblance of life, that the conditions of luxury under which we live make it impossible for us to understand life. He portrays the affluent as parasite while he praises the laboring poor of the simple life and faith. The author built his case against the class gradual to his confession. In chapter 2 of this book, Tolstoy explained that as youth he was ridiculed for his attempt to be morally righteous and praised in indulging. So, ladies and gentlemen, in the last, this is all clear to me, and I was glad and tranquil, and it seemed as if someone said to me, "See that you remember." So this confession is the gist of the life of the Leo Tolstoy. If Leo Tolstoy express the entire a struggle, whatever he taught, whatever he understand. If we read this, we can understand. Thank you very much.